girlfriend of a Boston police officer whose body was found
in the murder trial of Karen Reed after the jury said it was unable to
they
reach
will
a
retry
verdict.
Karen Reed
is
after a
accused
judge
of
declared a
Hello, and welcome back to The Alternate Jurors. I am Tabitha, and I am here to recap day 17. That was Friday, May 16th, 2025 for the Karen Reed retrial. And it was a half day, not half the drama, but it was pretty short and sweet today. First, for any new listeners, we do a recap every single day. So if you haven't listened to the first 16 episodes, I urge you to do so. They're, between 20, 30 minutes, sometimes even less. Like today, it's a half day, so we'll get through it pretty quickly. If you do want to just jump in the middle and listen from here, that's fine too. But there are some crucial things that you may have missed in the earlier episodes, so I urge you to go start from the beginning if you can. Also, so you don't miss tomorrow's episode, take a moment right now to just click the subscribe or like or follow button whatever you're listening or watching on, like YouTube. I think it's the follow the channel. On Apple, it's just that little plus button, but then you will get us every single day and you will not miss one of our episodes. Okay, so now that we got that done, let's start with day 17. It kicked off with not testimony, but with Bev, right? Judge Canoni, she was laying down some rules to the jurors, okay? The tone was, I mean business. She apparently got word of some jurors being too expressive or showing too many facial movements or maybe gasping or doing something that did not play well for her or somebody else. So basically, she told the jurors that they need to come in and they need to sit still and they need to look neutral, and there's no audible gasps, no eye rolls, and no oh my God faces. So basically, just sit down and look straight. And right about now, I think Margot and I are glad that we're not sitting in the juror box, especially Margot, because that girl, she cannot hold her faces to a straight face. I'm more of a poker face, but some of these things, man, I still gasp. Okay, to begin, prosecution played another great video of Karen explaining how she found glass on John's nose when she found him.
So John's laying there on his left and his right, and I approached John from the left. That's where the street is. And he had a piece of glass, like perched on his nose, like just wedged like a splinter would be. And I just pulled it, and as soon as I pulled it, it just gushed blood down his face.
Okay, so why is this important? Well, I think prosecutors are trying to emphasize that this broken glass, the cocktail glass, was in his hand. He got hit. A piece of the glass fell on his nose. Other people that I have kind of listened to, and I know I'm a juror, so I'm not supposed to be like watching the media, but they don't think it helps the prosecution's case, but I kind of think it does. I don't know. If I am in the jury box and I see that there's a piece of glass, which is the cocktail glass, or I'm assuming it's a cocktail glass, lying on his nose, and then Karen picks it off and blood starts gushing down. I don't know. I'm putting two and two together here. I could be wrong. But like all these videos, there's no context before or after. We don't hear anything about it. There's just a witness called to the stand that has nothing to do with the actual video. So forensic expert number one was Andre Porto. He was a DNA analyst from the state crime lab. He was first to testify on Friday, and he was focusing on all things DNA. Porto had tested a bunch of items like John's shirt, John's sneakers, John's jeans, broken drinking glass that was found in the yard, and these taillight fragments that were found at the scene. Essentially, if it could have had blood or DNA on it, then Porto swabbed it. His big findings were that John O'Keefe's DNA was present on, well, almost everything, even the taillight. It's obviously not shocking that John's DNA would be found on his clothes. They're his clothes. However, what prosecution is trying to say is the fact that it's on debris, aka the taillight that was found at the scene, really solidifies their point that John was hit by the car. But here's where it gets interesting, is that John's DNA wasn't the only DNA on these items. Porto found DNA mixture of multiple contributors on these samples. So on the broken taillight, for instance, well, there's more than 2 people. There's actually, I think, 3 different DNA besides John, or it's John and at least 2 others. That also was on the glass and on his pants and his shirt, and his shoes had so much DNA on it that they couldn't even really determine whose was whose. So in other words, there's 2 mystery DNA donors and there's O'Keefe's. Well, defense really took with this one, which I would have too. I mean, they pounced right on it. And during cross-examination, David Yannetti, Karen's attorney, was like, okay, so we've got John O'Keefe's DNA, but did you bother checking the other DNA? Like, do we know who the other DNA belongs to? And the answer was no. He then said, okay, how about, did you check for Brian Albert's DNA, like the homeowner? Or how about Brian Higgins? Like they've obviously are hinting that Brian Higgins, maybe like boom, boom, boom with John. And the answer was no. He was then asked if he was even asked to compare the other DNAs with these gentlemen's DNA, and he said, I was not. So the defense seems to be highlighting what, they have been highlighting the whole time, is that basically what the defense was trying to say is that this investigation was 1, shoddy, or 2, maybe evidence was planted. It really kind of did bolster their narrative of they had at least tunnel vision. If not, it was totally botched. Now, one more DNA tidbit is Porto mentioned that one of O'Keefe's clothing item, his jeans, had a mixture of 3 people's DNA. And of course, one was John's. When Yannetti pressed on that one, who were the other 2, he just he said, I don't know, it could be anybody. And I kind of see that with a problem. Maybe not so much with the pants though, like the jeans or the shirt, because obviously he was wearing those when he was transported, when he was in the ambulance. However, those people were supposed to be wearing gloves. So I don't know, it does cause some doubt, but not a lot. But the glass shards and the tail light, those things do make me question a little bit, like, whose other DNA? Did we even test if it was Karen's DNA? Whose DNA is on those pieces of taillight? Then we move to our second witness of the day, and she is our last witness. Actually, her name is Ashley Valor, and she is another state police crime lab scientist. She has kind of a different role than the other guy. She just basically is a puzzle solver. She documents and analyzes physical evidence, and she did the physical evidence near John O'Keefe's body, which was the taillight. So in court, Valor actually demonstrated how she took these shards of red plastic and fit them together into a jigsaw-like puzzle. It showed, that basically these taillight pieces came from Karen Reed's taillight. However, she wasn't able to place all of those items in the taillight, so there were some stragglers. That made me question, but defense didn't really pounce on that too much. But I did take note of that. Valor also confirmed the timeline of when she was handed the evidence, and that is something the defense definitely pounced on because she testified that she got John O'Keefe's clothing, and other items that didn't arrive in the lab for testing until 6 weeks after this incident. 6 weeks. That's a long time. Like, where was the evidence? And guess who brought the evidence to her? None other than Michael Proctor. That's right, lead state trooper on this case. And we all know he has been fired from the state police for his conduct during this investigation. On cross, Yannetti zeroed in on that delay of when the evidence was brought into that crime lab. He says, do you know where Michael Proctor stored that clothing during the 6-week period? And her answer was no. Another thing that they wanted to make the jury known to, and this doesn't have anything to do with Ashley, was they wanted them to know that Michael Proctor was not in the room during the autopsy of John O'Keefe. And then by 12:30, Judge Canoni, Bev, she was like, man, I am ready for a drink. And I'm just kidding. She did not say that, but I can only imagine that's what she's thinking, allegedly. So she told the jury that they could go home, and she announced that they would resume Monday morning, and she was looking ahead. And I'm looking ahead too, because I think day 18 is going to be a good one. Prosecution is expected to call a controversial crash reconstruction expert to explain the timeline. Now, it's going to get a little heated here because what we don't know is there was a side conversation with the jury not present about this particular witness, and the defense is not happy. So we shall see how this goes down on Monday. Also, next week is half day on Thursday and closed on Friday, which is good because it's my kids' last week of school and they have half days every day. And you know how that is. You got all these parties and whatnot. So thank you, Bev, for giving us a little break. And that, dear jurors, is where we left off for the week. And if you love Margot and I, please consider joining our Patreon. It is one way to give us a little something, and we will bring you our true opinions every single week. You can head over to patreon.com/the alternate to find that. And until tomorrow, my friends, have a fantastic day.